Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times to discuss horror and movies. And today I'm here to talk to you about bed rest.
It's coffee time!
Bed Rest just came out here in the cinemas, but it's actually a Tubi film that was released in December 2022. So that's why I didn't even have this one on my radar. I didn't have it on my list of movie releases for 2023. But when I saw that it was coming out here in the cinema, I'm like, horror movie, need to watch, need to report back. So we're gonna talk about it today, as always, spoiler free. Laurie Evans Taylor is the director of this American horror thriller called Bed Rest that came out on the 7th of September in Tubi, so everybody that has that service available can already watch it. Now here in the Netherlands where I live, we don't have Tubi, so for us we did get, you know, good for me, we did get a theatrical release, so I went to the movies to watch it. And let's talk about it. After struggling to start a family, Julie Rivers becomes pregnant and decides to move into a new home with her husband, and they plan on renovating it so that it is ready when the baby comes. She's ordered mandatory bed rest and begins seeing ghostly happenings throughout the house. Julie suffers through monotony and anxiety due to her bed rest, which leads to Julie protecting herself and her unborn baby. Bed Rest stars Scream actress Melissa Barrera, who plays the role of the pregnant wife, and this role was quite challenging because her character goes through a roller coaster of emotions, and there is a lot of things that is requested from her as an actress, and I do like her as an actress, so I felt like she did a really good job here, and her performance was one of the best parts of the film for me, one of the things that saved it a little bit for me. So Julie, our main character, has been ordered bed rest for the remaining 8 weeks of her pregnancy, and she will soon realize that being in bed 24/7, only able to stand up to pee, is not really entertaining. It is quite boring, and on top of that, she starts hearing things around the house. She starts seeing things that are not supposed to be there, like ghosts. So this really does take a toll on her, especially mentally. And we have here the trope of the woman that is believed to be crazy or imagining things because only she's able to see and hear certain things are happening in the house. I'm not a fan of this trope. I feel like it's quite overdone at this point. And yeah, it was not one of my favorite things, to be honest, to have again the main female character where her sanity is being questioned. This is a very female driven movie. It doesn't mean that male audiences are not going to enjoy it, but it is quite centered on motherhood, pregnancy, miscarriage, stillborns, stuff like that. So it is a huge trigger warning for people that have went through a miscarriage, are going through one, or had a stillborn baby. If you're maybe pregnant at the moment, or you have a really, you know, newborn kid in the house, maybe it's not the best time to watch this film, because one of the main themes of this movie is grief and loss of a child. So it can be quite jarring for people that have recently went through an experience like that. And that was one of my favorite things of this movie, to be honest, is how they took that topic that is almost taboo in today's society. You know, when you have a miscarriage or you have a stillborn kid, that's always like kept a little bit a secret. It's something people don't openly talk about, or not as much as we should, because it's something, sadly, that happens a lot. And I like that the movie embraced it and showed us how that affects a woman, not just physically but also mentally, and how it's always there. It's not something that, you know, after it happens you forget about it and you move on with your life. It's not like that. And I loved how they portrayed, you know, everything that the woman is still going through mentally. And on the other hand, you have the husband who is very, you know, optimistic about the pregnancy, and he's happy, and he's already forgotten about the loss that they had. And it really portrays how a real, you know, couple works after a miscarriage or a stillborn, normally, you know, not 100% all of couples are like that, but normally the woman takes a lot longer to process, to deal, and it never really forgets. And then the husbands normally tend to process things faster. They are ready to move on. They can put it behind them, and it is such a contrast, and I love to see that portrayed in this film. So apart from the movie trying to be scary, it's also heartbreaking a lot of the time. So it's one of those horror movies that is full of grief. But fear not, there is a lot of good old paranormal horror here. The problem with the, you know, the paranormal horror that the movie offers us is that most everything is quite predictable, expected. There is a lot of jump scares, so it was not as effective as I was hoping it was gonna be. The grief and the loss was really well achieved, and I loved to see how the characters process that differently. But when it comes to the horror and all the paranormal elements, I felt like it's all things I've seen before, it's all things that you can expect, it's all tropey, and it didn't really work for me when it comes to the horror. The movie also moves at a very moderate pace, so for, you know, the majority of the film, not too many exciting things are happening, and when they do, they are expected. It's only like the last 15 minutes of the film where it really catches up and it becomes more interesting. The thing is, I don't feel like the movie gives, even though it's quite slow when it comes to the pacing, they don't let things evolve in a way that it creates, you know, tension, that it's making you uncomfortable. It's not giving you that eerie, unsettling feeling. So that's why I feel like all of the paranormal horror didn't work for me, because there was no build up. It was kind of just too predictable. And when we were approaching the end is where things started to get really good for me, and I was on board with the ending until the last like 4 minutes of the film or so, and then I was again disappointed. So sadly, the horror didn't work for me. From my experience in the cinema room, neither did it work for many people. There was a guy that was completely passed out asleep. The girlfriend had to wake him up to let him know the movie was over. So sadly, I don't feel like in general for, you know, people, I don't think the horror worked much, apart from the expected jump scares that obviously make you react. And it doesn't mean that they were able to really spook you, which, you know, from a ghost film or a movie that includes paranormal and ghosts, you would expect a more crafted atmosphere that has you at the edge of your seat with a lot of like shadows and you don't know where something is coming from. And something else that I wanted to mention is, now that I just remembered, there is a cat in the movie, and the very first scene with the cat where something spooky is happening and the cat is going to check it out because, you know, cats have a sixth sense, you can see that the cat is going to pick up a treat because the people from the set put a treat for the cat to go to the spot they wanted the cat to go. So that was a little bit like too much for me, because that is pulling you off completely from the film. And then I was just looking for this kind of mistakes, you know, where you can see every time you see the cat, it was not great. It was not the best cat in horror movies that I have seen, like at least on show when he's picking up the treat, because then it kind of breaks the illusion that the cat is actually going there to investigate something paranormal. The cat is just going there to pick up the treat and get away from there. Now, I ended up giving this movie a 2 out of 5 because I don't think this is so bad, but would I recommend it to people? Probably not to go to the cinema and pay for it. I would say if you have Tubi or are able to find it in any other streaming services, I would, you know, recommend you to do that instead. It was a movie that it was not fresh or creative, didn't really bring anything much new to the table, but I really appreciated the topics that they touch when it comes to grief and loss. I feel like this is one horror movie that has dived a little bit deeper into that grief and loss when you have a miscarriage or a stillborn, and those are topics that I would love to see being discussed more often. So I was really happy to see all of that portrayed in a more realistic way, considering this is a film. But the horror didn't really work for me. There were only like 10 good minutes for me towards the end, and then when they wrapped it up, they ended up, you know, letting me down again. So at the end of the day, I would say watch it, but at home. I don't think it's worth your time if it's screening somewhere where you live, because like I said, somebody even fell asleep while watching the movie in the cinema. Bed Rest could have been such a good horror thriller, but I feel like it got stuck kind of midway and we didn't really pass through that. Anyways, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review. Let me know down below if you've already watched the movie. Maybe if you live in America, you already had seen it in December. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. What did you thought of it? I would be really excited to know your thoughts on this one. So let's talk about it in the comments. And thank you guys as always so much for watching. I hope to see you all, as always, in our next coffee time. Bye!